developing your pipeline. So today's session is again going to be on, last week was developing your pipeline and today is go or no go. Now that we have recorded, let me officially start again. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shonda Harris. I am a business opportunity specialist with the Columbus Small Business Administration, SBA, and we'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Capture Management, Go or No Go. This is the final training in a three-part series that we focused on this month on capture management. If you haven't had an opportunity to join us for the other two sessions, they are recorded. We will send you links to those. The first session was on finding opportunities. Last week's session was on developing your pipeline. So today's session will be a great opportunity where we'll have a small business that will kind of take the suggestions and the tools and resources that we learned about last week and actually learn how she has applied them to her business. So a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Make sure everybody's devices are on mute. And again, this session is being recorded and we will send the link to the recording. It takes about a week for it to be posted, so we'll send that to you later. Again, I am always excited that we get a chance to do these, and we do these sessions. This is part of our monthly government contracting training series that we have the privilege to put on with our wonderful partners at the PTAC, the Ohio University PTAC. So we don't want to take for granted everyone knows what PTAC, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, is. So we'd like to have one of the PTAC counselors in Cleveland, Jane Stewart, to give us a little introduction. Then we'll introduce our speaker and get going. Jane?
Thank you, Shonda. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see a good-sized crowd today. PTAC, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. We are funded by the Department of Defense and the Ohio Department of Administrative Services, as well as Ohio University, to provide government contracting assistance at no cost to businesses in Ohio. PTAC is a nationwide program, so if you're not in our great state of Ohio, you can find a PTAC locally. Our services run the gamut of government contracting, from helping you with registrations, certifications. We have a bid matching program where we can help to identify opportunities for your company. Then once an opportunity is found, we can help with bid prep or bid submission, proposal development, getting payment after a contract is awarded. Whatever your company might need to become a successful contractor, we can provide assistance. And with that, please don't hesitate to contact your local PTAC, and I will put our website in the chat, and I'll also put the website for our national PTAC in the chat feature. So thank you and enjoy today's webinar. I think it's going to be very, very informative and interesting. Thanks, Shonda.
Thank you, Jane. And today's session really will. The other two sessions were very informative, a lot of great information. And then today, again, we are actually going to find out how a small business actually takes those capture management tools and apply them. We recognize that we have many people on today's webinar, and you may be at different stages. Some of you may be just getting started your government contracting journey. I do see individuals, 8A firms that are logged in today, former 8As, small companies, wherever you're at along your phase of development. Today's presenter, I think, will have a lot of great information that you can apply. Today's presentation is going to be brought to us by someone that I know very well. I work with her as a business opportunity specialist in the district office. We support 8A firms, and today's presenter is an 8A firm, Teresa McAlloy of McAlogic. MacLogic is an IT firm that specializes in acquisition support, enterprise infrastructure, architecture, help desk support, data management, several other things. I believe their tagline is that MacLogic improves their clients' business through intelligent application of technology. So I believe Teresa actually started her business focusing on capture management and doing it for other companies. So not only does she do it for her company to look for opportunities as an 8A firm and as a woman-owned firm, she actually has a ton of great past performance and business experience doing it for other businesses. So without further ado, Teresa, if you'd like to go ahead and join us and share with individuals a little bit about maybe how you got into this field. I believe she's been doing capture management over 30 years, and then give us some great information about what you do and how it's worked for you. Thanks, Teresa.
Thanks, Shonda. I appreciate it. So hello, good morning, everybody. It's really exciting to see all your names. I mean, I love in-person stuff. So just getting to see names is a little sad for me, but that's all right, right? We're nearing the end of this thing, and we're all going to get through this well and together. So yeah, I've been doing business development and working in the federal space for 34 years, over 34 years, actually. My company is a little over 9 years old. So I had been doing a lot of business development for companies that were very small. I had worked with 8A companies before. I had worked with very large companies before. The largest one was PricewaterhouseCoopers. You may have heard of them. They've got about 30,000 people in this country. And I can tell you that the processes and the approaches and the things that you're doing around capture are no different whether you are a small company or whether you are a very large company. It really is a matter of how many people are there to share the load. I'm hoping that today's presentation, first of all, feel free to interrupt me. I think Jane or Sharon may interrupt me, or we can answer questions at the end. But if I go through something or there's a question that you have, I will do my very best to respond to it within the time that we have. And if not, I can always get you an answer at a later date via the SBA folks who can find me for sure.
I'll take the questions, Teresa, and I'll ask them. So if they put them in the chat, we'll do that.
Feel free to interrupt me, Shonda. It's no issue whatsoever. So I know you guys, and Shonda just mentioned, you guys had seen, some of you, not all of you, I know. There were two previous capture presentations. One of them was around how to, finding opportunities. And I think our colleague Billy Grill, our local Dayton area PTAC guy, whom we all know and love, walked you guys through that. So obviously we're not going to go into that. I know that last week there was some more discussion around building pipeline. I looked at that and listened to that presentation. Today, what I want to talk about is, first of all, kind of the practical application as well as how I go about deciding what I'm going to bid on. I was telling the team yesterday about an opportunity that I looked at that took me less than 10 minutes to make a decision to no bid, despite the fact that we had responded to the RFI over the winter and we had been looking forward to this thing coming out. When it came out, there were some real showstoppers that we walked away from it without further investing our time. While it might sound counterintuitive that the first thing I talk to you about is, well, get it out of your pipeline, really you do have limited resources. So this presentation, I hope, is going to help you see how I go about doing the things that you've been advised to do. Like, Billy talked to you about how to go out and I'm sure work through beta.sam.gov. Who doesn't love that system? I kind of don't, but anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is to use some of the various systems that are out there. And then there was some discussion last week that was around, go talk to large businesses or go do these things. Well, practically speaking, let's face it, the bottom line is, well, what does that mean? Go talk to large businesses. You knock on their door, hi, so I want to talk to you about that sort of stuff. So I do have a presentation for you. We were kind of joking earlier. I'm going to share my screen. We were joking earlier about the fact that my presentation style is pretty darn spare. So hopefully I'm going to illuminate each one of these slides. Again, we're going to talk about selecting the right opportunity. And hang on, I just need to make my screen over here bigger. There we go. Okay. So we're just going to talk about how we go through and select opportunities and invest our time and resources, because as you know, every minute that you spend on one opportunity is a minute you're not spending on another one, or you're not spending with your family, or whatever works for you. So let me get on the screen. All right. So we could just dive in and I could start telling you how I look at my pipeline and how I vote thumbs up or thumbs down for any opportunity. We could do that. It would not take 2 hours. So maybe some of you would prefer that, but the bottom line is you're not really going to learn a lot from that either, because my stuff is unique to me. What I wanted to do was kind of set the stage today, and I want to set the stage with 3 things. I want to talk, fundamentally speaking, as some of your businesses to the federal space. I want to talk a little bit about the, sorry, that's what happens when you wiggle your finger. I want to talk to you about the federal procurement cycle. I want to talk to you again, capture management is really where we're focusing. I do have some slides on proposal development, because obviously all of this goes hand in hand. When you select an opportunity, there's a lot of stuff that goes into a proposal. If we don't get to those slides, I will flip through them really quick at the end, I promise, because they really are just kind of my lessons learned and tips and tricks for how best to go after an opportunity. When I started my company 9 years ago, my original plan, and some of you business owners may be able to empathize with this, my original plan was to just go out and do the parts of the business that I absolutely loved. And the part that I absolutely love about this business is writing proposals. And while that sounds a little bit odd to some of you who really don't like the proposal process, to me, the proposal process is really your opportunity. You know, I was that kid in school that liked taking a test too, so let's just face it. I may be a little bit off center, but I love proposals, and so I manage proposals and help people understand how to work through capture processes so that when we went to write a proposal, it was a good one. So I do have some tips around that. But what I want to talk about right now is the federal procurement cycle. I know that you guys understand it. At least I hope you do. And if you don't, that's okay. I want to just level set to make sure that we are all kind of talking from some of the same pieces of information. The federal acquisition regulations are, you've got to get to know them. If you are not familiar with them now, I strongly recommend that you go out on the internet and familiarize yourself with at least how to find FAR clauses. When you did your SAM registration, you had to fill, there was I think it's like a page and a half or something of, yeah, I promise I've read all of these about EEO and Buy American, et cetera. But make sure that you know how to look things up in the FAR. The FAR is basically the definition for everything around what we're doing. It tells the contracting folks, the government folks, how they have to go out and look for sources for whatever it is they're buying, whether it's a product or a service or a combination thereof. It tells them some of the clauses that are required to be in our, ultimately in our contracts. It governs how they can talk to us in some parts. It governs how they handle our responses, and it also governs things like how we get paid. So understanding the FAR and being able to quickly go out and look things up in the FAR, I think is important for you as you move your business forward. Also recognize that, especially in the Department of Defense, there are additional supplements. So the DFARS, the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations supplement, is another level down from the federal acquisition regulation. And then if you're going after, for example, Air Force, the Air Force also has a supplement. And then a lot of local organizations will have regulations. So please familiarize yourself with those. The good news is if you know that there's a part in the federal acquisition regulation, let's say 8.4, which covers buying from federal supply schedules, there'll be a similar numbering system in the other, the DFARS, the Air Force FARs, et cetera. Also, one word of caution, there are some organizations that are not governed by the FAR. For example, the Postal Service. They use a different set of rules. But the common thing here is that regardless of what organization you are selling to, they do have a set of written guidelines and regs, and it behooves you to get to know those. So that was really what I wanted to say about the FAR. So let's talk about capture. You know, if you're going to sell something, you got to make sure somebody's buying what you're selling, right? Okay. So what typically happens, and I'm going to really briefly go through this. Basically, when the government is trying to come up with a requirement, not trying to come up with, I should say, considering a requirement they may have. So whether it's a product or a service, there is going to be somebody, a program manager most likely, who's thinking, I need to do this, or I need to buy a product that does this thing, solves this problem. During that time is a great opportunity for you to go out and influence what they're buying. So for example, it's kind of outdated, but back probably 15 years ago, I remember when 3D printing came around and additive manufacturing was just a concept that was going to be hung off of that. There were organizations who were doing 3D printing, who were thinking about additive manufacturing, and they were going in and talking to some of the government officials that were just starting to think about whether that would be applicable in their space. And so these companies had the opportunities to go in and influence the requirements that were put out, how things were evaluated, etc. So while the government is trying to decide what they want to go after, they're going to be thinking about it there. And the obvious question is, well, yeah, what do? You go stand at the gate at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, let me in, I have a great idea. This is where you want to join your associations. You want to get a hold of the small business reps. You want to go in and talk to the people in the area that you think would be interested in your service, and try to get in and talk to folks that do in fact have a need for your stuff. I do have one word of caution. Just about anything that you say to the government can be then used by them, right? I mean, that's unless you tell them explicitly, hey, this is a trade secret or whatever, they may then turn around and you'd be surprised, you know, you find that in the solicitation. A tip that I use is back when I was doing a lot of white papers trying to influence solicitations, I would have a white paper that essentially defined what it was that I thought I could do for this client, the kinds of people I thought it would take for the work to be done, and maybe some tools or whatever. I would print that out, I would walk them through it, and I wouldn't leave the copy behind. So that's just something I did. And then if they did say, well, hey, can I get this in writing? I would go back and sensitize the heck out of it. I would maybe not have the definitions of the type of per people, or I would not have the specific tools or something like that, and then send it to them with a caveat on the bottom. And again, the federal acquisition regulations do allow us to protect our information. And it's like section 2.14, it doesn't matter. The point is you can look it up in the FAR, but there is something you can put on there that essentially says, this is sensitive information, please don't share it without checking. All right, so conversations are all about shaping when the government is in early stages. As a small business, unless you are in a niche market or something new or unique, you may not be involved with things around that point of their work. But here is this little slide that I put together is the basic cycle, okay? After they've come up with the requirement, they want to buy widgets. Widgets could be a service or a product. They are pretty good about soliciting sources because their regulations say that they have to do market research. And the easiest way to do market research, quite frankly, is to get we contractors to respond to them. So typically what you'll see at the beginning of the cycle when something gets published is a source is sought or a request for information. And then there's a lot of iteration there. Ultimately, there'll be some kind of a solicitation and any amendments that go with it. Then when that solicitation comes out is when you're going to make your final go, no go. I put that in red because that's what we're really going to put a lot of meat on today. And then of course you submit proposals, lots happens there, and then there's an award hopefully to you. Anything that is greater than $25,000 total expenditure. So that means, you know, if they buy one, but then they have to pay maintenance on it or whatever. So anything $25,000 or higher has to be published. And the current official place for things to be published is beta.sam.gov. I believe it's all going to become SAM in another year or so, but right now it's beta.sam.gov. And I strongly encourage you to get in touch with your local PTAC, learn how to use beta.sam.gov to your advantage. You don't hesitate to call and ask them for help in using that, and then practice using it. Go in and create your own searches, etc. But you and maybe some other folks in your company need to know beta.sam.gov. Again, when you see a sources sought or a request for information, I also urge you to respond. So here's kind of a couple of little practical tips. One, when you're searching, and let's say, for example, my company, we're an 8A, we're also a woman-owned small business, we're an EDWSB. I'm not just going in and searching for competitions that are woman-owned or 8A. I'm actually explicitly also searching for opportunities that are undetermined competition type. And the reason is, when they are putting out a sources sought and they're trying to find out whether there are small businesses that can respond to something, and so they could maybe set it aside to put it into the HubZone program or the woman-owned program or whatever. If we as a community have not responded to those sources sought, then they don't know that we're out here. So that's one tip. So please respond. Another tip that I have on responding, and this is one that is counterintuitive. In a sources sought, they'll generally put their stuff out there, you know, we need widgets. In a request for information, oftentimes they'll say, we need widgets. And oh, by the way, here's the performance work statement. We need 3 widgets every Monday afternoon at 4. You know, it's the actual work they want you to do. And they'll have maybe some questions, you know, what's your cage code, etc. But they'll also say, describe your experience in doing this. And usually they give you 5 to 10 pages. There is a misconception that if you can't respond to all of it, you shouldn't respond to any of it. And I'm here to tell you that, first of all, what you put in your RFI response is not part of your evaluation ultimately when you do a proposal. So you don't have to worry about putting in an RFI response and you said, you know, I think it would take 5 people. And then when you actually go to propose, it actually needs 20 people. And you're like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think? They have to essentially flush that from their minds legally as they evaluate you. So don't be frightened to respond to an RFI. The other thing is, if they ask you 10 questions and you only have answers for 7 of them, then give them answers for 7 of them. Again, this is pre-source selection conversations. This is what's called discussions officially. So please do respond, and don't be afraid to add things. For example, let's say there are 4 technical requirements and you absolutely don't know anything about the cloud, but you know a partner, a teaming partner that you would bring in to do the cloud portion should you bid on this. Don't be afraid to say that. Say, I don't have experience in the cloud. However, I'm working with company X and they would be part of my bid should this come out in the 8A realm or the HubZone realm or whatever it is. So I just urge you to respond to those sources sought and give the contracting officer and the program management, give that community really the ammunition they need to set aside opportunities for us, for the smaller businesses. So I'm trying to think. Oh, and the other thing is, I am never afraid to add a sentence, even if they don't ask, that says, I would respond to this, and you know, if you put it into the 8A space, or I would respond to this, and I sure would like you to put it on Oasis Pool 1 8A, right? Because I have that vehicle. So do respond to those. And so as we were talking, discussions are, you know, they're kind of an official concept that people really misconstrue often. A lot of government people will try to tell you that the minute they start thinking about something that they're going to buy, that they can't talk to you, that you can only talk to the CEO or, you know, or whatnot. that actually is counter to what the federal acquisition regulations state. And I know it's dated, it's since 2011, but there was a memo actually put out called the Mythbusters memo where, see, I think it was Frank Kendall, just went right down and debunked the entire myth that we could not have conversations with government people, that contractors were somehow people that, you know, could not be spoken to just in case you accidentally told one contractor something that you didn't give fair opportunity to the others. Until the solicitation is released, or until like a draft solicitation is released and the contracting officer specifically and explicitly directs you not to talk to anybody else, it's fair game to ask questions and to talk to folks. All right, so that's awesome, right? But how do you do that? I remember when I first started in this business, I remember thinking everybody knew everybody except me. Like everybody had everyone's phone number, everybody had everyone's email, everybody, you know, could walk into an office except me. And then over time, what I learned was that the reason that they know each other is, first of all, they join professional associations, and so they get to know each other there. So that's an avenue. Second of all, they make ample use of their small business administration. I'm sorry, I don't mean, although SBA will help. I actually mean small business points of contact. Every federal buying organization has a small business office tied to it. You can typically look that up on the internet and find email addresses and phone numbers for the small business advocates for the various organizations that you're looking to go talk to. And oftentimes you can contact them and say, hey, I'm looking at this opportunity, or I'm looking for people that understand, you know, widget making or whatever. Can you help me out? And they will often give you contact information, and then you can certainly pursue getting an appointment. So, you know, be careful about assuming that everybody else knows something you don't know. Step up. Part of the job of capture is to start asking around. And generally, is it Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of separation? Generally, you can find somebody who'll point you at the right guy. Now, here's another thing. Use those industry forecasts and guides, small business guides. Sometimes it's just acquisition guides, but every organization, most organizations, some of them are better than others. Some of the organizations, DHS is really good about forecasting to industry. Some of the Air Force organizations will forecast upcoming acquisitions. Go ahead and take a look at those. Oftentimes those will list points of contact. So again, you know, early and often try to get into discussions with the people who know. And let me just say one other thing about this. Discussions aren't just with the federal government. Be talking to your industry counterparts. Ask other contractors, large and small, new and more established, what they know about the opportunity. And you'll be surprised at how much information you will find out just by talking about stuff. So there you go. That's my little pitch on the federal procurement. So I'm just going to take a little drink of my hot water. I quit drinking coffee and it's really awesome, but I still like the habit of hot water. Okay, so what we're going to do here, I know you guys have talked about capture and the whole gamut. And so I actually took a presentation that I'd done before and I skinnied it down really to just focus on selection. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So I know that you've, well, not all of you, but a lot of you, and you do have access to looking at how to put things into your pipeline, how to effectively select opportunities. And so what I want to talk about is, practically speaking, the way that I decide what goes into my pipeline, and more importantly, what comes out. I also want to talk a little bit about moving opportunities through my pipeline. And hang on just a second, I want to see, I'm just checking because my, says I'm frozen, and you know, I'm sure you guys are really wanting to see that. Well, apparently I'm not. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and press on. Shonda, can you tell me whether I am still live, active, and not just talking to myself?
You are active. We can hear you. Your screen is frozen. We can just see a picture of you, but it is frozen. So
Isn't that cool?
yeah.
Who doesn't love the Zoom world? All right, well, cool. All right, well, you know what? Life goes on. I'm sure I will stop and restart my video. Sometimes for mine, that works. Hopefully it did this time. So we're going to talk about pipeline. All right. Here's how I go about putting things in the pipeline and moving them through. First of all, when I'm doing these searches, whether it's on beta.sam.gov, I also, there's other places that you can get things in your pipeline. I won't look at anything that is less than 6 months out as far as an RFP. I know that that is probably a, it's an arbitrary rule of thumb, right? It's like, 6 months. The government does have a tendency to slip their schedules to the right. So if it's an opportunity that you're like, look, this is in my backyard, this is, this is the work that I do, et cetera, then you could possibly do a little bit of digging and find out whether that potentially is going to slip. But I really recommend that you look at least 6 months and have a 6 to 18 month. Those are what I consider to be near-term targets. 6 to 18 months. So if you're looking for a contract where you're expecting to see something come out, but also as you're doing your research, and I'll talk about research in a minute, as you're doing your research, you want to make sure that you're looking at if there's an incumbent, if there's a currently performing contractor, you want to make sure that within that 6 to 18 months, that contract is going to be expiring. So somewhere between 6 and 18 months out, you want to put things in your pipeline and start working on them. The other thing is, and this is the thing that people have a tendency not to do, I think, from a discipline perspective, and that is keep searching and look at things that are awarded. So something may get awarded for, 4 years, and you want to be searching on things that are awarded, and then you want to sort through those and make sure that, again, you're putting things into your 6 to 18 month near-term pipeline, but also that you're doing the 18 to 30 month, and then maybe a 36 to 60 months. 60 months is kind of a long time in today's day and age, but I would expect that you would at least have a 3-year kind of a rolling set of pipeline opportunities. How do you find opportunities other than looking for them already having been published? You need to develop a relationship, again, with those small business advocates in your targeted market. You need to talk to the contracting officers in your circle. And by getting them into your circle, what I mean is attend industry days that they hold. For example, the 763rd Sourcing Squadron at Scott Air Force Base, they're actually holding something, I believe it's in May, where they're going to have each one of their resident organizations is going to brief upcoming opportunities and how to get in touch with them. Attend those things, ask questions, feel free to follow up with those folks. So, keep an eye on those kinds of opportunities that are coming out. Those are often, by the way, and I'm sure Billy covered this, but where they're having industry day and outreach to the community, et cetera, they are often published as well on beta.sam.gov. So keep an eye out for those. Professional associations is going to be one of your best sources for information as well. Again, a lot of our government clients do attend those professional associations. The one that I am active in, actually I'm active in a couple. One of them is AFCEA. That is nationwide, and if you're supporting the Department of Defense, you definitely want to look into your local AFCEA organization. Another one, I'm a woman-owned small business, so I'm also active locally here in Dayton with Women in Defense. And for those of you in the Columbus area, we're actually looking at starting a Columbus-based AFCEA. We're starting to talk about doing something more there because right now you guys are being serviced, I think, a lot by Dayton. So if you're interested, I know the people that are the officers. I'm not one of them, but professional associations are really key for getting to know additional information about what might be coming out. And also those are the organizations that will host the government folks that are going to be coming out and talking to you about what they've got coming in their in their portfolios. So those are some of the things that you can do to get things in your pipeline. The other thing I want to talk about is a little bit about capture. So again, I know that this is third in the series, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating what was said at the other presentations. But to me, when I put this slide together, my entire thought was, you know, the capture manager's job is to be doing everything. It's everything. You have to decide what you're going to target. You have to decide what you have to understand your client. What do I mean by that? It means buying behaviors. For example, there are organizations that typically do a lot of set-asides for small socioeconomic companies, well, like mine. For example, HHS has a tendency to do that. EPA has a tendency to do that. There are other organizations that don't necessarily put out a lot of socioeconomically stratified opportunities. They tend to bundle them together and do larger ones, larger competitive ones. There are organizations that buy from tribals, which is a slightly different socioeconomic than just about everybody else. But as you're doing your research, and I will talk about research again, I think that's going to be the key, and that's going to be probably the part where you're going to want to put your coffee cup down and take a note or two. You can then start understanding your client's buying behaviors that way. The capture manager is also responsible for understanding not only the competition, but the competition in the concept of co-opetition. The person who is your competitor today is going to be your partner tomorrow. So as you are looking across other companies and getting to know other companies, you know, you want to understand the sorts of opportunities that they go after. For me, I like to start getting to know who they tend to partner with, and also whether they are whether they have a great reputation for working with partners or not. And again, you can do that through professional associations, meeting with other companies. I discourage email blasts only because we get 1 million of them a day. I'm sure you guys are as well. I encourage you to try to get to know folks via smaller forums like industry days, like some of the conferences that hopefully will be starting up soon in person again. Although, you know what, do go to those ones that are on Zoom or whatever. I've gone to a few where they have this concept of these little breakout rooms and you can get to know people there. So I encourage that. The other thing a capture manager needs to be responsible for is solution input. So they need to understand their client well enough and what they're pursuing, the opportunity well enough, that they can say, hey, we do, for example, my company does a lot of financial management related systems. So my capture managers need to be able to say, hey, this is where we can key in our financial experience with an IT effort. So they need to do that. And then they also need to have information on price to win. Yes, ma'am.
We have a couple questions in the chat.
Okay.
One, this gentleman, as a freight transportation company, they work with suppliers and buyers to provide cost-effective rates for truck shipments. What will be the best practice to find suppliers, vendors that win projects and will need to transport for the goods?
Oh, wow, that's complex. So, you know, that's going to be a lot of specific keyword searching, because now what you're talking about doing is having to figure out, because if I understand that correctly, Shonda, if I want a contract and then I'm going to sell widgets to the Army, this gentleman is saying, how do I find out who won the contract to sell widgets to the Army?
Right.
Because I want to go to them because they're going to need transportation, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So what I would do there is, first of all, you're going to have to look at product service codes and see if any of those are associated within the opportunity as it was let. The other thing is, I think that you're going to have to figure out from a NAICS perspective where people are buying products. You know what I would do? I think I would go to the federal supply schedules that GSA puts out, because a lot of products are bought there. And I don't know anything about that business, so I'm kind of talking off the cuff here. But really what you're looking for is companies that sell things. So Defense Logistics Agency is an agency that I would definitely start looking at the things that they are purchasing. Those awards are going to be for stuff and things. For example, somebody has to buy the toilet paper, right? And they have to transport it. DLA is the organization that centrally buys and manages a lot of those purchases. So
Yeah.
I would start, if I was your new business developer, I'd be looking at DLA right now and seeing what they've been awarding.
Great. And in addition to that, if I may add, one additional thing that they could do is they could work with their PTACs and track awards. PTAC can actually set up what's called a bid match. Jane talked about that, where the bid match is a daily opportunities where they can set up searches with your NAICS codes and your keywords to look for opportunities on a variety of different databases. In addition to searching for NAICS codes and keywords, you can also set up your searches to track for awards. So one of the things you may want to do is to track awards of whatever widgets or whatever type of products. And then the company that has won that contract, then you can maybe approach them or solicit to them. But then also, as Teresa said, DLA is a great, because they purchase a lot of the different tools and widgets for DoD agencies. And so there is a, DLA does have, what is the training that they used to do about 4 or 5 times a year? If somebody could put that in the chat.
TKO.
Say that again.
TKO.
TKO. You can look at the TKO, and the PTACs can help you with that training, knowledge, and opportunities, basically how to do business with DLA.
One other thing I would add too is, as you're finding those organizations and you see, oh, company XYZ just won this, you can go out to sam.gov and you can search the company name and actually see the publicly available information, and you will often be able to find a phone number, et cetera, for those folks, for whoever their people are. Obviously, you can go to their website as well. But I've found that going to sam.gov is a pretty easy way to find companies.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple more in here. Where can I guess you had mentioned AFCIA, AFCIA. They said, is that right?
Yeah, it's
okay.
It's AFCEA.
AFCEA. Okay. Next one. You touched upon discussions with the Corps before an RFI or a source SOT is released. They want to know, is it okay to approach them after the solicitation period has, hang on, the question just shifted. Another question just came in. Is it okay to approach them after the solicitation period has closed?
So let me make sure I understand the question. If by solicitation period is closed, so they've put out their request, and you're talking about a request for a quote or a proposal. In that case, well, you're wasting your time if it's after that. But if you're talking about after the response on an RFI or a source is sought, absolutely. So the Teresa rule of thumb is, especially as a small business, I have no shame. I will send an email or make a phone call to a CO on an RFI. Let's say the RFI was due May 3rd, and I didn't see it till May 2nd, or I didn't see it till May 4th. I will contact them and say, sorry, I saw your source sought. I know that, you guys closed that yesterday, but would you still accept a response? And I'm very careful to do this. Let's say I'm sending them a note on the 4th. It was due the 3rd. Would you still accept a response to me if I can get it to you by close of business, or by 5 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday the 5th? So I'm always real, very specific. If I get you something by this date, and that deadline's me, and I can tell you, I have literally never had a CO say, don't send me anything more. They always seem to be interested in more market research. Again, on an actual solicitation, an RFQ or an a request for quote or a request for proposal, no. But on any kind of sources sought or RFI, lean forward. And I'm telling you, I've been probably doing that bravery thing for over 20 years. Never had anybody say no. I hope
Great.
that answers.
Great response. No, these are some great questions. Next, where can I find industry days in the new beta.sam.gov format? And
Did you hear me say I hate beta.sam.gov?
PTAC is on the line, so the PTAC counselors can also chime in.
I was gonna say, Billy Grill, Jane.
I know Billy's on.
Yeah, it's so all of the notices that come out for events will be under the special notices type of notice, and that is on your left-hand side toolbar. Now, that being said, they just did a full design change earlier this week. So now that we all know where the small business button is and we had everything down, it's a new game of hunt and peck. So my tried and true is to go to the left-hand side of the search criteria, select your type of notice as being special notice, and then use the keywords to drill down into small business events and industry days. And again, if you have any problems, like Teresa alluded to, it really is a learning experience in using the tool. But I'm always happy to help and learn some things together now that it's a brand new design, and will be some consternations and learning experiences for all, I'm sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Billy. And you can check out, Billy recently did an updated presentation on the recent changes to betasam.gov, and that recording is also on the PTAC site. Look for the link in the chat so you can check that out. And this is the last one we have for now, and then we'll allow you to go. Not quite sure I understand this, but looks like this person is new to business. As a new business starter, where would you suggest they start to build the knowledge for them to be successful? I think that's what they're asking.
As a brand new business, well, first of all, I would, and I'll start to answer it and just make sure that I'm on the right track. I would strongly suggest that you download, and I don't know if the other socioeconomics use the same form as we do, but the Small Business Administration actually has a business plan format. I think it's called a 1010C, Form 1010C. And it's like, it feels like 5 billion. I think it's about 54 questions. And Shonda, is that the right form number, 1010C?
It is, and there's some other templates.
Yeah. So go look for the template that Small Business Administration has out there and walk yourself through those questions. Even if you're just doing it with a crayon and a piece of paper and a cup of coffee, walk yourself through that, because it's going to inform for you what you don't know. For example, I remember when I was doing my first business plan, when I applied for the 8A program, and it wants you to tell, like, what companies are you going to go and try to work with? Well, that made me go, you know what? I bet you Google will tell me who the top recipients of Air Force money is, or something like that. So I would suggest, to make yourself smarter, is to go out, look at that format. You went into business because you have something that you want to do. I don't know what that something is, but work through that plan. And I hope is that kind of getting toward that answer?
No, I think that's great. And if I may also additionally add, because you're just getting started and you're plugging into today, it could seem a little overwhelming. So typically what I also like to recommend is, as a business, you may want to start in focusing on growing and building your business first, and not trying to focus, even if eventually you do want to do government contracting, that's great. But if you're building a house, you don't start with the roof and the windows and the doors. You lay a foundation, and you do have to have a good, solid business before you move on to doing government contracting. So I would recommend that you also start with your local, another resource, the Small Business Development Center, SBDC. They can help you work with building your general business. And then also the PTAX more specifically can help you with that government contracting. But the SBDCs can help with that business plan and helping you to identify things just to build your general business. And yes, we can send the template.
And just kind of along those lines, I agree with Shonda on that. Like I always say, you wouldn't go to the Olympics to learn how to swim. Government contracting isn't all that complex. It's very rules-based. If what you're looking for is learning about organizations and who buys what or whatever, every single organization that we work with at any level has some kind of a website. If you wanted to go work in White House Communications, I promise you can go to the White House Communications website and they will talk to you about their mission and usually have links to what they sell. So I think that might also help in answering that question.
Okay, and I think we're good for now. Thanks, Teresa.
Okay. So we were talking about, before I started worrying about my stuff being frozen, we're talking about the fact that the federal capture manager really is the orchestrator of all things. And this slide, I just left it because I really kind of like it because it really does kind of tell you what a capture manager is doing. I always say that the capture managers, if you want to break the job down into a tagline, it's you need to wake up and worry. Your job is to wake up and worry about whatever opportunities are in your pipeline. And so you're the one that every single day wants to be moving that opportunity forward. The difference between a small business and a large business here is that in a small business, when you look at who is gathering the intel and who's worrying about whether we've got the right solution and whether we can get the price down to the right space, et cetera. A lot of times you look around and it's a party of one and you're enjoying a conversation in your head. In a larger business, oftentimes you can farm out some parts of this like the solution or the pricing, et cetera, maybe the HR part. But fundamentally speaking, whether you are a small business or a large business, all of these things are the things that the capture manager needs to be worrying about. And in many companies, the capture manager, for small ones especially, the capture manager is also the proposal manager. So you need to be intimately familiar with everything across the board. So competition types. Again, as I am selecting what I want to keep in my pipeline, what I want to move through my pipeline, and what I want to invest my limited resources in writing a proposal or even an RFI response on, I am considering the competition type. I think I foot stomped pretty hard earlier. If you see an RFI in an undetermined competition and you know that you've got the capability to do the work, please respond to those, because what we want to do, of course, is we want to get the competition to be smaller. We don't want a full open competition if we can compete against all of our fellow 8As or women-owned or hub zones or SDVOSBs. So one of the main criteria that I use in looking at an opportunity and whether I'm going to pursue it is it in a socioeconomic category that I have? So if it's an SDVOSB, unless it is a client that I already know or there's other compelling reasons, I just don't even look at those because I'm not an SDVOSB. So always look at the competition type. If it is a full and open competition, I do look at those because then again, it'll depend on what the functions or technology that's being purchased. And typically there, I am looking to maybe position myself as a subcontractor. A limited competition is something that is off of, if you're not familiar with them, you need to become familiar with them. GWACs, government-wide acquisition contracts, I think. MAC, multiple award contracts, federal supply schedules, etc. Go to the GSA website and you'll find a lot of information on the variety of large contracts they put out, but also agencies specifically will put out vehicles, contract vehicles. And for example, the Navy has a vehicle called NextGen, Seaport NextGen. And so the Seaport vehicle is one where it's a mandatory use vehicle. So if I'm going in to sell to an organization that has a requirement within its organization that it first consider sources from a certain vehicle, and I don't have that vehicle, that's another quick determinant for me of whether I'm going to look at that or not. Sole source is, that's super awesome. But sole source, and especially this year, sole source is a typical thing, because if you didn't already have a relationship with an organization, it was really hard to get one this year. And in a sole source situation, and the FAR does govern it, of course, sometimes they do it because they'll say it's a socioeconomic, so it's an 8A or a woman-owned directed award, sole source, we're just going to go to this company and we're done. Other times it's because they're the only source of supply. So if you're buying a widget and there's only one company that makes the widget, obviously they can justify doing a sole source. So be familiar with the competition type when you're looking at things, and that will help you determine how much energy you want to put into an opportunity. For example, if there's something that comes in that's in my sort of space, functional space where I like to work, the work that I know we have good past performance on, et cetera, and it's an 8A competition, I'm more interested in that than I am in something that is a small business set aside, because 8A is a smaller subset of competitors, theoretically. But remember that the government did all that market research and got all those RFI responses because they're trying to determine whether there are at least 2 sources of supply. And that's how they decide whether they're going to set it aside into one of the socioeconomic programs. So you just keep a track of that, use that as a major criteria, especially if you're a smaller business. You want to be competing. That's why we have in sports, right? Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. You want to be competing against like organizations if you can, because they are companies that are going to have similar types of past performance, et cetera. And it's going to be not everybody and his brother can bid on it. So I strongly urge you to keep track of competition types. All right, so I actually made this huge list and I put it somewhere. You know what? I can actually speak to this off the top of my head. All right. So guys, here is the meat of what we're going to talk about. How do you pick the ones that you're going to go after? It's actually pretty simple. It's not, but it's kind of simple. Is it in your business plan? I mean, is it something that you do? I do not pursue any work that is to do civil engineering. I don't know anything about, any civil engineering stuff. I don't pursue work where there's a product that they're trying to buy. I don't build products. I don't make widgets. My company is a services company. So the first thing you need to look at is capability. It's kind of like a Venn diagram, right? Another thing that you want to look at is, in addition, part of capability is, can I deliver where they're asking me to deliver? So for example, for me, delivering in Ohio is the easiest because that's where I'm headquartered. But I can also easily deliver east of the Mississippi because I do support clients in multiple other states. It is harder for me to deliver something in Seattle, Washington. It's not that I couldn't do it, but it would take quite a stretch for me to do it. So I tend to put those lower down in my priority. So you really need to sit down and think about what the priorities are for your company. Thus far, we have not bid on any overseas work because, again, I've never sent anybody overseas. So you really need to look at your business and think strategically about what functionally or technically you can do, like the gentleman who said that they transport goods. Well, if you transport goods by truck, that's a different thing than transporting goods by air or by sea. And so that would be a good criteria. So it's like, look, if this is a sea transport and we don't do sea transport, it doesn't matter that whether we're really great at transporting that product. The bottom line is we don't do it in that locality or geography. So always look at that. The other thing that you need to be looking at as you're making a selection is, do you know the client? So this is one where I remember people used to say to me, well, you've got to know the client. You definitely have to know the client. And all I could think was, I just don't know all of these people. Are you telling me I can only, go after things that are in my backyard? Those are the only people that I know, or people that my people know, or something like that. Well, quite frankly, part of knowing people is also knowing the organization. So understanding the goals of the organization. So I know a local company here who has done extremely well. It was a woman. It is a woman-owned company that does a lot of administrative support, and she actually started in the 8A program and graduated quite a while ago. But one of her mechanisms, and I thought that this was brilliant, was they do administrative support type work, scheduling, other event management, that kind of thing. And she bid on everything that was essentially in, I think she went as far as like St. Louis, and then she was all East Coast, but she bid on everything in every organization and kind of built a machine to do that. And over time, she did win some things. Personally, I think that that's a little bit tough because you do burn people out, and I think it's tough to throw in a lot of bids like that. So I tend to be a little bit more granular in spending my resources. But it is, there's something a little bit elegant about that, right? We do one thing and one thing only, and we're going to bid that everywhere. And there was enough business for her to go after that thing. So you do need to understand an organization's goals. You don't necessarily need to know all of the people. You do need to know the kinds of things that they do. And again, the internet has such a tremendous amount of research capability. And I strongly encourage you to talk to your small business advocates in those organizations. They, for example, Air Combat Command, AMIC specifically, out in Norfolk, they put out this awesome, about every month, the small business advocate there puts out a little blast that says, hey, here's what's coming up. Here are the events that are coming up. Here's the opportunities that are coming out. As you get to know those small business advocates, some of them do that. Get on those mailing lists and take a look at what they're doing. That's how you're going to get to know your clients. So can you do the work? Do you have the capability to do the work? And can you physically get there and do the work and hire the people to do the work? Do you know the client? Either you know the people through maybe FCA or something, or do you understand that organization? Another thing is, and this is the hard one for small businesses, do you have the past performance to bid? Frankly, I go right to the past performance section of every RFP first. That's the very first thing I look at. Because if you don't have the past performance, you're supposed to be rated neutral if you don't have any past performance. But I can tell you my experience has said that if you're going in and you're expecting your neutral past performance to win you something, it's generally not a good strategy. But do you have the past performance in the way that they're asking for it? And remember that as a smaller business, as a small business, you can put in your people's experience. And what I mean by that is this. When I first started working, the first Air Force work that I went after, I wasn't putting in that my company had done project and program management. I was doing a program management deal. I put in that I, Teresa McAlloy, had done project and program management. So you often can now be very careful in doing that. That's smaller deals, be very careful in doing that. However, when you're looking at past performance, that is always going to have to be a key to whether you want to keep something in your pipeline and pursue something. And remember, and I can't stress this enough, one of the best ways to get past performance is to team. Team. I don't care if you can do 100% of the work. That's awesome. I don't care if you have 4 people that you could put on that contract tomorrow if you win it and they can knock it out of the park. That's awesome. If you don't have the past performance and you're looking at the evaluation criteria and you need to have past performance in X, Y, Z, go find a partner that has past performance in X, Y, and Z Put that past performance in if it's allowed, and give up part of the deal. Because I don't know about you, I don't care if I have 4 people, I would rather keep 2 of them and give 2 of them away. Remember, there's limitations in subcontracting when you're a small business. But anyway, the point is keep 2 of them, give 2 of them away, and end up with that. Because guess what? Not only are you getting the work and getting the experience, you're building past performance for the next bid. So I can't stress enough that you always need to be evaluating your past performance, past and present performance, and reach out in team when you need help on that. Finally, and this is one that I think people don't think about often enough, and that is, do you have the necessary resources to bid? Many of you may be in small companies, so maybe there's only a couple of folks. So you really have to look at, when you're doing a go, no go, you have to decide, can we write this proposal? One of the things that I have my folks do as a matter of discipline is I have them present to me when we do our opportunity review boards. I have them present to me not only performance risk. So what's the risk on putting this proposal together? Are we going to be able to staff the right people? Do they have the right clearances? You know, so forth. Like not only the performance of the job risk, but I also have them give me the development of the proposal risk, because every single proposal is a little mini project, and that is going to take people's time, effort, and energy. Early days as a small business, you as the business owner or as a senior person in the business, you're probably going to get involved with every single proposal. You have to consider how many hours in any day that you have to put on a proposal. So as you're looking at opportunities and you're already looking, am I functionally or technically capable? Is it geographically something that I can get to? Do I know this client? Do I understand the organization? And do I have past performance? Do I have the requirements necessary to bid? And do I have the time and the capability to respond to the proposal? There are quite a few other things that I look at. Those are the 4 basics. And then some of the other things that I want to talk about are basically more granular levels. So for example, you have to look at your overall business strategy. Real world example, I looked at an RFP this morning. Actually, I looked for at a source of SOT this morning and was trying to decide whether I was going to respond. It was for 3 people at Space Force, you know, Patrick for Space Force. And they were going to be doing advisory and assistance type services around budgets. Which is awesome because my company is really good at that. And there was a little bit of program management, a little bit of budget, a little bit of acquisition. Yay, right up my alley. But what I also needed to look at was those people were going to be on the inside working with the government. So they were going to be conflicted out. My company would not be able to bid on larger deals that were going to be supported by the same organization, because they would have inside baseball, if you will, about the budget, right? About the acquisition and how they were going to acquire things. So you really need to look strategically speaking. And I made the decision to no bid it because I'm actually looking at some larger deals in Space Force. So as you are going forward and building your company, make sure that you've considered strategically what it is, you know, what it is you want to do as time goes by. So for example, if this same deal had been in Department of Forestry, I probably would have responded to the RFI because I have no opportunities in my pipeline right now in the next 36 to 48 months that are for forestry. I don't have one. So for me to go in and get a 3-person deal at forestry to do the same exact kind of work, I'd love that, and we all need revenue, right? So just as you build your pipeline, just keep looking always strategically, is this small deal going to conflict me out of something that I've already been putting energy into that's a larger deal? So I think that's an important thing to look at. I want to make sure I talk about, okay, good. I'm close enough to that. All right. The other thing that you want to check out, and again, it's granularity. You want to look at the incumbents. So this is a major factor that I use in going after additional deals. So we've talked about all of those other areas. We've talked about, if it's a limited competition, if it's on an 8A or a GWAC or whatever. The other thing I look at is the incumbent. So speaking specifically to those of you that are in like the 8A world, when I look at an opportunity that's coming up for bid and the incumbent, it's an 8A, let's say it's an 8A competitive, and the incumbent is an 8A company, and their graduation date is a year or two from now, and the solicitation's coming out, next month or 6 months from now. That gives me pause. I don't automatically say, oh, it's an 8A, it's in my space, it's geographically where I can get to it. I've got great past performance. I can do this. I've got proposal resources. I don't do all of that. I look at that incumbent, and now I'm going to start doing some more research. Again, the capture manager has to wake up and worry. I'm going to start doing some more research. I'm going to see if I can go out and I'll tell you how to do this about 2 slides from now. I'm going to go see and look and make sure, see if their funding has been increasing or decreasing. I'm going to see if they had any de-obligations. I'm going to go to their website and see if they talk about this client. I'm going to go to my industry association people and see if anybody has heard about this company. What am I looking for? I'm looking to see whether the client is happy with this company, because it makes unseating them a matter of numbers. And even then, imagine, right? Past performance is going to come into play. Their past performance is going to be working in that office for that customer doing that work. My past performance might be awesome. It might be near that office. It might be doing that kind of work for a slightly different customer, maybe still, we'll call it Air Force. But, there are, especially with the 8A program, because there's a more limited number of bidders, I tend to walk away from ones where I think it's a strong incumbent who has not left the program. That being said, if it's a strong incumbent who is about to leave the program and the RFP is going to come out after they leave the program, this is where your advanced planning, remember I told you guys to look at the awards. So company X is going to graduate June of 2021. Their opportunity is going to be, and I'm doing really close dates because I can think of them easily. That opportunity was going to come out in May. I'm probably going to shy away, but the opportunities or the solicitation is probably not going to come out till September or later. I'm probably going to call that incumbent and see if they maybe want to talk to me about working together on the deal. Again, team. It is the number of times that I've directed people, I've said, just make the phone call, and I've had people come back to me, oh my gosh, nobody had talked to them. And because don't assume that somebody's already got them, locked up. Assume that maybe they're trying to figure out what to do next, and you never know. So make those phone calls if the incumbent will have graduated. That's a criteria that I always look at for the 8A things. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, so strategy is big. We've talked about that. So let's talk a little bit about teaming. I keep saying team. You guys, I cannot stress enough, man, teaming it is one of the unique things I think that we do on the federal side of the house that people coming from the commercial side find different or difficult. There are important reasons for teaming. For me, there are 3 reasons that I team, and only 3. One of them is to fill a gap. That gap could be a functionality. You've deployed products in the Azure, realm, and I haven't. Or the other thing, this client and I don't. Or you have an office that's required near the delivery location and I don't. To fill something I don't have. The other thing is to remove you from the competition. So if I think that you're going to be a strong competitor, I'd rather team with you and split the work with you than to have us be on different teams or be going against each other. I want to make a plug from, and this is a personal Teresa thing. as a woman-owned company, as an 8A company, EDWOSB, if there is a, and it holds true for hub zones, SDVOSBs, it holds true for everybody else. There is a concept of like socioeconomic. So there is a local 8A here in the Dayton area who I know well, and she and I will often team up because, as you know, with the limitations of subcontracting in a services environment, I am required as the prime, let's say in an 8A competition, to do 51% of the work, 51% of the dollars. If I team up with another company that is the same situation as the competitive type. So in other words, if it's a 8A set aside and we're women owned, it doesn't matter, right? We both have to be 8A. It has to be whatever that competition type is. We together have to do 51% of the work. Well, it sounds like I just cut my work share, right? Yeah, I did. But why would we do that? Number one, the strength of the two companies is often stronger than either one of our companies separately, or maybe it's proposal resources. And that additional 49%, we then can maybe attract a larger company or a company that has better quals than we do and go forward into an 8A competition with a stronger team by not standing up two teams and trying to divvy up the talent. I hope that makes sense. If you're not familiar with the like socioeconomic requirement, rule and law, please check with your PTAC or your SBA folks, or look it up. Look up like socioeconomic on Google and it'll talk to you about that. So remove competition, fill gaps. And then the final reason that I will team with a company is strategically. And what I mean by that is this is where maybe there's 3 different deals that are coming up and we agree that we're going to flip-flop on deals. And so it's part of an overarching strategy that we have to work together or to go into a certain space. For example, there are times when I want more work share than a company's willing to give to me. And so what I'll say is, well, I really wanted 10%. I know you're only willing to give me 5%, but would you give me 5% on this other deal that you've got going on? And so I will work those deals as a prime, and I also try to work them as a sub. So, a strategic teaming where you are kind of trading off quid pro quo kind of a thing is a great reason to team. Again, the one thing I caution you is to, especially on the strategic ones, always be thinking about whether you have conflicted yourself out. As a small business, we tend to work on the inside with the government a lot. So please make sure that you are not conflicted out of any kind of work as you go forward. The other thing on the teaming is this. I know that last week they talked about approaching large businesses. Go to a large business that's one work. They have to set aside 5% of it or 23% of it or whatever. There is a statute that for certain large full and open competitions, large businesses are required to have a small business subcontracting plan. Good luck with that. My personal opinion is that those aren't followed up with very well. So when I go in and I talk to a large business that I think has a great opportunity to win something, and I know that there's, let's say, a woman-owned component or a small business component that we can fill, I never walk in and say, hi, I'm a small business, I'm a woman-owned. Always lead with your actual capabilities. Always lead with, we have this capability in financial management, or we have this capability in cloud migration. We have this capability in trucking. We have this capability. Oh, and we're a small business, so we would mark that off for you. What companies are looking to do is they're looking to put together a team that's going to best serve their client and also be the most competitive and win. And trust me when I tell you that every large business knows at least 20, 30 or more that are 8As, woman-owned, SDVOSBs, et cetera. So the way that you need to differentiate yourself is the way that you differentiate yourself anyway, which is your capabilities and whatever those are. So I recommend that you consider that. On that note, teaming documents. I'm not going to go into excruciating detail other than to almost just do my tagline, which is, if you don't have it in writing, you don't have it. If you don't have a teaming agreement, you're not on the team. Yes, we all want to trust each other with a handshake, but I always do the we're all hit by a bus approach, which is, if you and I have agreed that I'm going to get 5 people on this 10-person deal, and you get hit by a bus or I get hit by a bus, no one's going to know that that deal was made. It needs to be put in writing. So please make sure that you are requesting a non-disclosure agreement when you first start giving away any kind of secret sauce. Make sure you mark your information and say that it is private and protected information if you're giving away any kind of your secret sauce to how you do things. Make sure that when you're looking at the teaming agreement, that the terms and conditions are what you expect them to be and what are reasonable for you. And that includes work share. So looking at your work share, which is generally speaking in an attachment to the body of the teaming agreement. So, and usually it's attachment A, and make sure that it defines your work share in terms that you're comfortable with. So that could be, you might see something that's a swim lane, or, hey, we're gonna let MacLogic do all financial management tasks on this effort. That's a swim lane. Anything financial management, I'm your gal. It could be percentage based. I'm going to get 7% of all revenue. It could be specific people. You could say, we're going to provide the logistician for this effort. So whatever it is that you're comfortable with, and generally they will also spell out your requirements with regard to supporting the proposal effort. So please take a look closely at those documents, but more importantly, make sure you have them fully executed. I have been in meetings where I've got multiple teammates, and I've got a couple of teammates that haven't signed their teaming agreements yet. And I'm doing a big kickoff for the proposal. And they're like, oh no, I promise it's gonna be here this afternoon. And I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry. We'll record the presentation or whatever. I won't let somebody into a teaming meeting, or excuse me, into a proposal meeting that has not signed their teaming agreement. Because without a teaming agreement, there's nothing to protect the information that we're sharing. One other thing to look at when you're looking at teaming agreements is exclusivity. There are companies, very large companies I know, that will never sign an exclusive teaming agreement. But the bottom line is that you're either going to be exclusive, so you're only teaming with that company, or you want them to be exclusive to you, they're only teaming with you, or non-exclusive. If you are doing something with Oracle is never going to sign an exclusive teaming agreement with you. In fact, most product vendors are not. A product vendor typically is non-exclusive because they don't care who wins the services portion. They just want the customer to use their stuff, right? So if you're a product vendor, make sure that you're not being locked up in an exclusive. And if you are a services vendor, make sure that you're locking your people up as much as you can. So if you don't have a teaming agreement, you're not on the team. All right. Here we go. Just these are the things from a capture perspective. These are some of my sort of walkaways or takeaways. What I really want to talk about here, and this is where you might want to, if you haven't already done so, and I don't know if Billy shared this stuff with you, but the websites that you need to bookmark and be comfortable with are usaspending.gov, and that is usaspending.gov. Obviously sam.gov. If you're a government contractor at all, you've put your information in there so you know where sam.gov is. We've already talked a million times about beta.sam.gov. FPDS. I actually don't know, is that FPDS? Anyway, if you search FPDS in Google, F is in Frank, P is in Paul, D is in David, S is in Sam, it will come up with, I think it says FPDS Next Gen. And then there's other subscription services. Bidspeed is one that is actually available from SBA if you're an 8A through the 7J program. It's really good. It's got some predefined searches that I think that you would like. And GovWin is ridiculously expensive, but They do have some breaks for smaller companies, so don't be afraid to at least ask them what they can do for you. The value of those is that they do a pretty good job of organizing and presenting information. All that being said, you do not need to spend a nickel on a service to find opportunities. Beta.sam.gov will have everything that you need in there. The hard part and the reason that people do spend money on these other services is because when you're trying to project for already awarded things, they're just a little bit easier to search through. So what I wanted to talk about here was from a capture perspective, as you are trying to decide what to bid on. I've talked a lot about, can I do the work? Can I deliver the work, geographically, et cetera? Do I have past performance? What about the incumbent? But one of the things that I've found that people have the hardest time with is getting information on the incumbent, et cetera. The easiest way I've found is if you can get access to a GovWin, or oftentimes nowadays the government is publishing the current contract numbers for companies that are performing work. So, for example, I just looked at one yesterday where they are combining 2 task orders into a single task order, and they gave the task order numbers of each of the existing contracts. Take that number, go to usaspending.gov, and go to search, advanced search, and in there, there's going to be an award ID. Click on that on the left-hand side, put in that contract number, and hit search. It will come up with all of the actions against that contract number. Little hint, those dashes that you see in a contract number, for some whatever dash dash dash, if you come up with nothing on your hit, get rid of the dashes, because it's human error, right? Or human beings are involved. The information that is put into the system, sometimes the contracting officers put the dashes and sometimes they don't. So if you go to do a search on something that is a contract that exists and you get nothing, get rid of those dashes, try it again. When you get into the usaspending.gov screen, and this is, honestly, I probably sound like I think this is pure magic. It's because I think it's pure magic. Because 10 years ago, it didn't exist. And it has been a game changer, because in that usaspending.gov record, play with it. And what you're going to find is it will tell you the number of bids that were put in the last time this was, or when this was awarded. It will tell you the competition type and how that happened. If it was a task order off of one of those MACs or GWACs or schedules that I told you about, it will tell you, it's called the parent ID, the parent ID. So what you can do is start getting a real good look at what this incumbent has gotten on this contract thus far. So usaspending.gov will do that for you. I typically do this. So this is my Teresa process. If I have a contract number, I go to usaspending.gov, I open this thing up, I mine as much information as I can from their screens, and it's a lot. Then I go to FPDS, and that's the actual official system. And USA Spending actually is pulling information from FPDS, by the way, okay? In USA Spending, you're going to see a list of the actions against a contract. But in FPDS, when you go to that system, you put that same contract number in, generally with no dashes, but you put that same contract number in at the top, and it's going to come and it's going to put every modification. So for example, if there was a modification to change the contracting officer's rep, that's a modification number P0001. There's no dollar value associated with that. It's going to come up with that, which is fine, right? What you want to see is you want to get that information on that contract. You can download it into an Excel spreadsheet. I use the CSV values, but download it to a spreadsheet. And then guess what? Now you can go in, look at that spreadsheet, and you can see every nickel the government obligated to that contract and every nickel they de-obligated. So you can see over time how the contract has performed, which will tell you something about the incumbent. You can see, hey, is this one of those contracts where they give you money on October 1st and then next year they give it to you and every year they give you the same amount of money or whatever? Or is this something where they incrementally fund you over the life of the contract? You learn a lot of information there. But here's a couple of things that I think a lot of people aren't as familiar with. In FPDS, God, I'm giving you guys all my research tips. Shonda, what the heck? Anyway, here's another research thing that I do. I will go in and you can get the company name out of, whatever you get it from. There's so many sources for that. Obviously from the contract number. I'll go to SAM and I'll pull their DUNS. You can go into FPDS and you can put their DUNS in the search field and you can see everything they've ever won. So one of the things about government contracting, if you're new to government contracting, there are no secrets. Everything the government spends with you is known. I always joke about the fact that on an annual basis, I have to send in an updated blood sample to SBA. But anyway, FPDS will tell you what another company does. Why is that important if you're only worrying about one deal? I've used it when I'm trying to decide whether the company that I want to team with has verifiable past performance in a certain area, because the NAICS codes will be listed, etc. So I encourage you to do as much research as possible when you're trying to decide what to pursue. I know I'm talking a lot and there's a lot of things that I'm saying, but once you get kind of your rhythm down, you can make go, no go decisions, but now you're doing them based on facts and data. If the incumbent is doing a bang up job and they're not growing out of their socioeconomic, find something else to bid on. One other little tip, and no offense to any tribals that are on here, but the tribal rules for 8A awards are so drastically different and larger than ours that you will also want to pay attention to whether the organization that you are going to be bidding against is a tribal. And if you're in the 8A program and you're looking at an 8A deal and it was awarded to a tribal in the past, I just caution you to do a lot of research and think long and hard before you want to go head to head with them. So I'm just going to take a break and say that's kind of the end of my, here's my secret sauce for research. And this is how I pick a deal. Is that, how am I doing, Shonda?
You're doing great.
No questions? Am I being clear?
No, it's clear. Yep. And we still have time.
All right,
so you're
excellent.
Good. Thank you.
Well then, as if all that wasn't enough, I'm going to give you guys some proposal, just Teresa proposal sort of tips and things. You've heard me refer to a capture manager. You've heard me refer to a proposal manager. Again, in small businesses, this might be the same person. Generally speaking, a proposal manager is responsible for the structure and content of the proposal. So they're the persons that are looking at the solicitation and deciding what you're going to put on paper and commit and send to the government. They're also responsible for making sure if you have any win themes. For example, a win theme might be hands-on program management that enhances communication or something. They're responsible for making sure that that's getting into your proposal. They're responsible for making sure that the schedule is followed, as well as regardless of whether you win or lose, that you get a debrief. And a note on that, whether you win or lose any opportunity that you propose on, request a debrief. You can learn as much from a win as you can learn from a loss. And this will make your proposals better going forward. So always ask for a debrief. And that to help you understand how to make your product better. Capture managers, as I said before, their job is to wake up and worry. They're responsible for developing those win themes, making sure the solution gets developed. They're responsible for client knowledge and teaming and competitor knowledge, as well as price to win. Again, I want to go back to the other thing on research. On a price to win perspective, okay, you can go into FPDS. I mean, you can pull it from USA Spending, but it's harder to work with. But in FPDS, you can get what the government's been spending. So how is that useful? Well, if you know, because, oh, I don't know, oftentimes nowadays the government is publishing in their solicitations, hey, this is 9 people, or this is 90 people, or whatever, right? They're giving you notional full-time equivalent counts, or historical counts. So let's say they give you a historical count of 80 people, and you can go over and get the financials. You can do the math to get kind of an average rate, or an average cost or price. I'm sorry, price. An average price for the folks that what they're currently paying. So that research will really help you in making sure that you're kind of in the ballpark. Obviously, there are other avenues for that, like going out to an agency's budget, which you can find. Every organization does publish their budget, and that takes some Googling to find the budgets, but it is not easy to find the budget information. But over time, as you learn to deal with like the old Exhibit 53s and the Form 300s, those are the inputs to the president's budget and inputs to DoD budgets. You can usually track money because FPDS will also tell you sources of money. So get to know the FPDS data, get to know how to track budgets. And as a capture manager, it will help you determine whether funding is going to be available for the opportunity. So capture managers and proposal managers, again, could be the same person, which is a really hard job, but they work in tandem. The final thing that I look at, and this is when you're responding to RFIs and when you're responding to anything else, and this is for proposal development, this is the key. Honestly, I did delete most of what I had for my proposal stuff because I had a really in-depth thing here, but I did want to say this. When you are newer in the business and you're trying to decide whether you're going to go after something and you get a 185-page draft solicitation, you can spend a lot of time mucking about and trying to figure out what's going on. But the way that I look at every solicitation, draft solicitation comes out, is I go first to the PWS and I look to see what kind of work they're asking me to do. The PWS might, and this is actually, I'm using PWS because we see a lot of those, but this is also, folks, you might see a statement of work. You might see a statement of objectives or performance work statement. You're going to see something. It's basically, it's used to be back when everybody followed the exact same process, it was the old section C, but it's basically the work requirements. You know, it's we need people that can program or whatever. I look at that to make sure it's in our space. And I briefly look at that. In there, focus yourself on the things that matter to you guys. For me, I look at scope all the time, and I always look at clearance. Because that's usually in the PWS. Then go to, and I do these kind of in tandem, section M, it used to be, but now it's usually labeled evaluation criteria. The government will always tell you how they're going to evaluate you. Oftentimes the evaluation criteria is, quite frankly, a repeat of what's in the instructions to offerers. In the classical RFP format, and some people are still using this, that would be section M is evaluation criteria, section L is the instructions to offer, and section C is the work to be performed. That's important because, quite frankly, what it means is in your 185-page thing, I generally zip all the way to the bottom because evaluation criteria is section M typically of an A through M document. So your last 2 sections generally are instructions as well as evaluation criteria. That absolutely is not going to hold true for everything. Obviously, I also search on the word evaluation or instructions. So every solicitation is going to have basically the schedule or the upfront matter, which is their pricing tables, the list of attachments, that sort of thing. That's what I consider part one. Part two is always all your contract clauses. A note of caution, contract clauses aren't necessarily something that you can ignore. Sometimes you have to fill those in and send them in. Most organizations are allowing you to do online reps and certs, which means you just certify a thing that says my SAM record is up to date, and then you don't have to do anything else. But read the instructions carefully, because sometimes they do. I've done several in this last year where we've had to print those out, fill in a couple of fill-ins, and send them back. So always read those carefully. And then again, L&M at the end are going to tell you exactly what they're going to want included in the proposal. One of the beauties, I find it to be beautiful, maybe you don't if you come from the commercial environment, one of the beautiful things about government solicitations is they tell you exactly what they want to see, exactly how many pages, and more often than not, the font that you have to use, and right down to your margins. I strongly encourage you, when you're doing your proposals, to be intimately familiar with the government's requirement, to make yourself a compliance matrix, which is essentially a checklist of everything that they've told you you have to do, and follow it absolutely with no deviation. And oh, by the way, don't give them more than they asked you for, but make sure that you're painting a good picture in your proposal. So if they didn't, for example, this is a real world example. There was an organization that put out a solicitation, and what they wanted was price and past performance. That was it. I want your past performance, and they told you what kind and how and to send it in, and they wanted your price, period, done. And this small company, it was actually an 8A, they wrote a 40-page technical response because they felt that the government should know how they were going to do this and how important their stuff was. And they were just pretty enamored with their own technology. The reason I got involved was when I first started my company and I was doing proposal management, et cetera. I was actually hired by one of their senior marketing people who said, could you please evaluate our proposal? And I said, sure. So I was looking at it and I wrote back and I said, I'm confused. You must have sent me the wrong solicitation because I've got a 40-page proposal. And he went, nope, our owner is just insistent that we're going to send this in. And so I got paid money to write a response back that said, don't submit this proposal. The government will not read it, period, end of sentence. And it is, it's just not, the government is not going to, if they tell you 10 pages and you give them 12, they will stop reading at page 10, period. And they're required to. So please follow the instructions as though your win depended on it, because they do. All right, that's my proposal soapbox. I have 7 little proposal tips. They're really quick, and then we're going to be done. I think I'm going to have everybody out here on time. So I just said it. Be compliant. If they told you that they wanted 1.25-inch margins, do not give them 1.3. Do not give them 1. Give them 1.25-inch margins in whatever font they told you. Be compliant. And double check and triple check your compliance with all requirements. Be clear. Look at whether you want to say small dog or puppy. Be concise, and remember that the people that you're talking to don't know you, they don't know your stuff, and oh, by the way, they absolutely are trying to understand what you're trying to say to them. So make sure you're telling them specifically who, what, where, when, how. So the example that I was taught, and there's somebody on this call named William Miller, and it made me smile when I saw that, because the guy who taught me this is a guy named Bill Miller up in DC area. And I remember him saying to me that it was like my first proposal. And he said, don't say to me that we're going to give you a drink. Say, we're going to meet with you on Friday at 10. And at that time, we will bring you a glass. We will go to our refrigerator that is stocked with Pepsi, and we will get you a Pepsi in a can, and we will get, 5 ice cubes out of our already made ice cubes, put them in the glass, pour the soda for you, and we'll hand it to you at 10 a.m. I was like, what? And he said, they have to be able to picture in their heads what you're going to be doing and what they're going to be doing. That is a specific response. So don't tell them, you know, we understand that you want us to meet with you every Friday. Tell them, you know, we understand that we want to meet with you on Fridays. We propose that that meeting happen late in the afternoon because no one's paying attention anyway, and we want to give you bad information. Like whatever you want to say, but be specific, use their language. Remember the basics that you learned probably in 7th grade, who, what, when, where, and potentially why. Give them a cohesive story. So if you're talking in your program management section about the fact that you're going to use Microsoft Project to manage the project, make sure that when you're later on talking about the details of the technical solution, that you say, as mentioned in the management section, we're going to use Microsoft Project. Don't all of a sudden start talking about spreadsheets. Make sure that you are a cohesive solution. And make sure that you're cohesive between your volumes. So if in your past performance volume, you talked about a project and you called it, you know, this project where we achieved 100% success, don't over here say we achieved in excess of 99% success. Be consistent so that they don't get confused. Be believable. It's like, of course, be believable. Make sure that when you're talking to them that you are giving them logical if-thens. So, you know, if you say to them, you know, we're going to come up with 5 new ideas every week for you, is that really something that passes the sniff or logic test? So just try to make sure that as you develop your solution, it makes sense within that organization. You're not going to have, you know, 100% on everything that you do, but you've got to talk about how you're going to get close to that and what you're going to do if you don't. Substantiate. This is where there's this little acronym, UBA, unsubstantiated bold allegations. And that is substantiate what you're saying. So that is part of making it believable, right? We're going to do this, and we've done this before, and it's been effective. We're going to send you the agenda for the meeting the day before we have the meeting. And we're going to send you the draft of the meeting minutes the day after we have the meeting via email. And we've done it before. For example, in our project over here where we did this, we found that by doing this process that we're saying, that our customers were more able to send the right people to the meeting. It's all extemporaneous, so if it's a bad example, sorry, but you get what I'm saying. Tell them what you're going to do. Tell them that you've done it before, and so you can be trusted to do it again. And then finally, make it appealing. Make it be of benefit to them. If I ever red team with any of you, what you will hear me say lots and lots and lots is, well, where's the customer in this? Because oftentimes we forget to talk about what the customer is doing or how we're interfacing with them. And mostly what our clients want to know is, what will it be like to hire your firm? What will I get? And what kind of onus will that put on me to do things? So,
Teresa,
yes, ma'am.
we have a question. Actually, it was sent directly to me, but I think everybody could benefit from it.
Okay.
And actually, great question. It's going to be actually one of the things we're going to talk about next month in May. But this person is a newcomer to the federal government contracting. And they want to know, is it better to respond to an RFQ rather than an RFP? And maybe you can go into some of the differences a little bit. And then again, we are going to have training next month specifically on the difference between RFQ, request for quote, RFP, request for proposal, and maybe RFI, request for information. But you can quickly go over that.
So welcome, welcome to the federal space. It's great, and you're going to love it. I obviously love what I do. So is it better to respond to an RFQ or an RFP? No, it's either one. It's whatever your client decides to do. So the basic difference, as I understand it, right, is that a request for proposal is a proposal about what you are going to do for the client. And generally the proposal that you submit becomes part of the contract. So if you say, I'm going to talk to you every Friday at 3, you've committed to talking every Friday at 3. A request for quote is really where you're giving sort of some of the generalities of what you're going to do. And it often is, it often has a proposal with it, but the government can then discuss with you, like if you're quoting, let's say, I don't know, $1,000, they can, money's a bad example. You're quoting that you're going to talk to them every Friday at 3. The government can come back and they can really offer then to put a contract in place with you based on your quote. And they could say in that contract, we're going to have you talk to us every Thursday at 3 or something like that. So from a, is it best to respond to one or the other? I don't think so. It really is, do you have all of your other capture ducks in a row? And is this an opportunity that's appropriate for your company to pursue? I hope that helps.
No, that's good. And we will, again, next month, we'll have specific training on what the differences are. I was going to see if I can pull up something. I'll pull up something from my email that kind of gives specific targets on that, but that's good enough. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that was all that I had for everybody. So I can stop sharing my screen, and I'm sure people are getting tired of hearing my voice. There's, you know, I hope that I've given you enough information to not scare you and to help you understand that, man, there are resources out there available to help you do darn near anything. Look at my little thing, is it not, it's not stop sharing.
Teresa, as always, I feel like I learn an awful lot every time you present. You're a gift. And I think that one of the things that you're able to offer that like PTAC and SBA can't offer is the business perspective. Because we can always shout from the rooftops, hey, you should be, and why haven't you? And a lot of times you have been, or I'm just speaking of businesses in general. It's a lot different to be the boots on the ground and actually doing the capture management and the pursuing of work. And one thing that I always take away, because businesses ask us, you know, especially 8A firms, you know, where's the work, where's my contract, and you're seasoned in the amount of work and time and effort that you put into it. There's no magic bullet. It's putting the work into it and knowing that sometimes the payoff is down the road, but just to keep trying.
Right.
And keep communicating and go to the events. And yes, it's been hard because of the pandemic, but hopefully we are on the tail end of this. It's not hopefully. We keep seeing that we're on the tail end and people are starting to open up again. I make the recommendation to firms to become involved with AFCEA. Can't emphasize that enough, you know. And it's funny, someone commented, I'm worried about the smoke alarm. Is that you? Do you have like a button? I thought it
actually isn't a smoke alarm. You know what it is? Because we had a little bit of a power glitch, and so my alarm system is beeping. So I'll talk to my, it's my alarm system. My house is not on fire, I promise. We're just having really bad weather here.
Oh no, and I thought my treadmill makes that noise if I don't turn it off correctly. I'm like, man, I'm just gonna have to check that out in the basement. All right, but that's just, I just thought that was funny.
It's that ridiculous thing upstairs. Thank you for worrying about me. No. Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, you know, that's a good point, Jill. You know, this is not an easy business, but stick-to-itiveness matters, I think, a whole lot. And quite frankly, I mean, and this is maybe it's just me. There is no other type of business that you're going to get in where you're going to be able to really see the impact of the things that your company does. We are, as government contractors, I don't care if you're supporting education or forestry or DOD, we are supporting the United States of America and our way of life, period. And what greater thing could you do every single day than to keep trying at that? And one thing about our community is we are open and inclusive and super want team with other partners. And so I think that you're going to find that the more that you engage with federal folks, the more you're going to see things like, You know, there's a thing in Dayton, Billy, maybe you could put it in the chat, the Wright Brothers Institute, where they do a bunch of collider events, and they have all kinds of support for federal contractors. If you're in the Dayton area, or if you're, you know, not in the Dayton area, you could, nowadays with Zoom and things, you know, join. This is the one organization, you know, Procter & Gamble doesn't get up on a routine basis and spend money trying to tell you what they're trying to buy. They don't, but the federal government does. And Procter & Gamble doesn't, I'm not knocking Procter & Gamble, I love them, but they're just coming to mind. United Airlines doesn't come out and try to get other companies to get together. You know, the federal government does. I mean, look at the PTAC folks and the SBA folks. Just come on down, man. Federal work is awesome. I love it.
And it's
obviously
a really unique space. You're right. And just going through FPDS and understanding USA spending, it's amazing the amount of information that you can find out. So just, but be patient with the process too. And I heard you expressing that as well. It's not going to happen overnight. And if you're brand new to federal government, and this is the first webinar you've ever attended about government contracting, welcome to the confusion, but give yourself some time and get in front of people that, like Teresa and others, there's a lot in the community that are out there trying to help other small business. So just being a part of these trainings, I think, helps. Once we're able to start networking in person, we will definitely do that again. But I want to say thank you very much again for your time. It's always a pleasure. I see Billy did add the Air Force, I think it's the Collider. He added that to the chat. And I just wanted to quickly let everyone that is on this call know that we have organized 3 trainings for May, and I'll just give them to you just through the Zoom meeting, but we're also getting the flyers developed, and they should be sent out here shortly. So on May 13th, we are going to do a responding to a sources sought notification. Teresa, you talked about that during your presentation. What should companies look for? How should they plan a response? Then we are going to do on May 20th, responding to a federal request for proposal, and just what to look for. Teresa, you mentioned, you know, within 5 minutes, whether to bid or not. Part of that is knowing where to look, and what things would qualify you immediately and which things would disqualify you immediately. So we are going to go about that training on May 20th as if you have decided, yes, I'm going to go. Now what? Okay. Then May 27th, I got my contract. Now what? Because you get your first contract, you want a second contract and a third contract and a fourth contract. How do you keep your customer satisfied with your performance? So what are some best practices on managing your contract so that you can position your company for future work? So those are the 3 trainings that we have planned for May. And then in June, we have 2 trainings. The first one is on June 10th. And it's a 2-part series. It's best practices for continued contract success. We're going to have the SBA Procurement Center representative. Not many companies know about the Procurement Center representative and the role of what they do for small business. So we're going to have Phil McLean speak to that. And then the commercial marketing representative, also a part of the SBA. They're responsible for making sure large businesses and small businesses can partner with each other. So that's going to be June 10th. And then June 24th, we're going to have a small business panel on continuing contract success. So we are just rolling out the trainings until we can really do these in-person events. That's what we're going to continue to do. So very thankful to our partnership with PTAC on this. And again, for your time today, Teresa. Does anyone else have any questions? We are at 12:02. So I know that we are just stopping everyone from running to their kitchens for lunch.
Hey, Jill, I put in the chat to everybody, my current favorite site for finding information about the FAR. I put in FPDS website as well as USA Spending. And for the love of Pete, I hope everybody knows how to get to sam.gov.
Wow, yes, they should, especially after today. They if this is the first time they've heard of it, they should be jumping on it. So, all right, everybody. Well, thank you again, and just a lot of
Jill,
yes.
one last thing, we will send out the links, even though I know we put it in the chat, but for the other presentations that are posted on PTAC's site. And I believe it takes about a week for this to be uploaded. So it'll be about a week, but all 3 of them will be there for you to find, as well as other great trainings on the PTAC website.
Is it under the events tab? I meant to ask that of anyone that's still on the line from PTAC, because I've gone to the new PTAC website. Is it just like a drop-down button that says webinar recordings, or?
Sharon or Jane, I've been out there, but Sharon or Jane, can you speak to that?
If you go to the ptac.ohio.edu website, at the top, there is a button for trainings and videos, and you'll get all of them listed.
It's actually it's called Tools and Links with the drop down.
Oh,
and
that's
then
right.
you would click on training. Yeah, then you click on training videos in the drop down.
So they're called training videos, not webinar recordings.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, or IT.
Tomato. All right. Well, thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Goodbye. I also put FCA information in the chat in case anyone wants that.
Very good.
Bye.
Teresa, that was awesome information.
That was wonderful.
Thanks.
Yes, great presentation.
I love doing it, you guys. I love it. I love it. It reminds me of the discipline. You know, I love this business. So yay. Thank you for giving me a chance. Appreciate it.
Gave out so much extra stuff.
Yeah.
I hope it wasn't too much.
Sharon, I think she'd be a really good speaker at AppTech.
I think she would.
At what?
AppTech, the Association of Procurement Technical Assistants, where all the PTAC counselors come together for training.
It's like the national conference. Yeah.
Yep. In the fall, they meet when things were open in the fall, they met in DC, and in the spring, it traveled to a different city. But all the PTAC counselors around the country would be there. I think she would be a great, Jane.
Listen, there are 2 things that I will always try to make time in my schedule for, Shonda, as you know. One of them is women in business and mentoring women, and the other one is small businesses and mentoring small businesses. So you've got my email. You can find me.
Okay, we're going to hold you to that. The author witnesses.
You heard me. I said, trying to find time in my schedule. See you guys. I'm going to go get some lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Excellent job,
Bye.
Teresa. That was awesome. Next time I'm over at the Green, I'll buy you a pizza from Pies and Pints.
Perfect. Thanks, Billy.
Anytime.
Ooh,
Yes.
pizza.
You rock, Teresa.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
Sharon, I completed your email request.
You can stop the recording, please.